Hey folks, hope you're doing okay today. So this is the first 5-minute video walking through James Bryan Smith's The Magnificent Story book. Now, the book as a whole is asking the question, what is the magnificent story that should shape our lives? And he's writing out of the premise that all of our lives are lived according to a story. Stories make sense of who we are, where we're going, what is meaningful, what is good, what is evil, who God is. Stories are the things that make sense of all of that. And we tell ourselves stories and live out of stories. And so James Bryan Smith is asking, well, what is the magnificent story that defines reality, that is worthy of who we are and who God is? And so in chapter 1, he wants to set a foundation for the rest of the book. He's setting a framework. And he's drawing attention to these three things called the transcendentals: beauty, goodness, and truth. They're transcendentals because they transcend humanity. They transcend even our own defining. They are things that draw us upward into something greater, into a deeper reality. Now, beauty is when you see it, when you experience it, it stops you in your tracks. It's pleasing to the soul. Goodness is something that genuinely benefits those who receive it. And truth is what defines reality. And you run into truth when you run into reality, and you run into non-truth when you run into something that bumps up against what you know is real. So truth is gravity. I run into it when I jump in the air and I don't just keep floating. I come back down to the ground. I run into truth there. So truth is something that holds reality together. Now, in this chapter, in chapter 1, he draws attention to these three transcendentals: beauty, goodness, and truth, as the things that should define or help us define what the magnificent story is. A lot of times when we think of the story that we should live our lives according to, one of the first things is truth, especially as we think of the gospel. We think of the word truth. But how often do we think of beauty and goodness as equally defining of the story that we should live our lives according to? And I think that's the big thing in this chapter is the way he draws attention to all three. It's not just truth, it's truth that is beautiful and good. Because there are a lot of truths that we tell ourselves that are not beautiful and good, but yet we live our lives according to them. And we'll get to that in later chapters in the book. But for now, the first chapter is really focusing on beauty, goodness, and truth as the framework for making sense of the story that shapes our lives. And he wants us to ask the question, does the gospel we tell ourselves, does the story of God we tell ourselves point to beauty, goodness, and truth? And that's the fundamental kind of question he wants us to think about. And in the book, he draws attention to the cellist of Sarajevo. During the 90s, there was the Bosnian War and the conflicts, and there's this cellist in Sarajevo that would play his cello beautifully amidst the ruins of war. And he uses that to highlight an example of beauty, goodness, and truth. The cellist playing his cello amidst the ruins of war was beautiful. It was good because it benefited those who heard it. And it was true fundamentally because it pointed to the reality that we are not made for war. And so James Bryan Smith wants us to start thinking about, how do the stories we tell ourselves reflect beauty and goodness and truth? Or do they? And can we think more about beauty and goodness and truth to make ourselves more aware of those transcendentals, and to ask ourselves, do our stories, do the lives we live point to these things? Do they reflect them? So that's chapter 1. We'll keep moving on to the next chapters, but have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.